It's v.h.s.x. What do you mean?
Alright everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're having a reaction discussion about a video from Starstreamers titled Why Dead by Daylight is Breaking. So apparently they actually have a background in game development and they actually have worked with the same engine that DBD runs on. So they're actually going to give us a pretty good sort of idea as to where the flaws are, apparently.
Going on behind the curtain, and I've got to say my spidey senses are tingling. This game is fucked. Okay, to make this more digestible for someone without experience in game development, I have to explain a basic concept within game engines, this being the class system, specifically seen within object-oriented programming, which is what Unreal Engine uses. The class system, to put it simply, works on a parent-child structure. Developers start with a base class, the main parent of which all children are derivative from. In the case of Dead by Daylight, I'm completely certain that in early development, the devs decided that both Killer and Survivor would be derivatives of the same parent. This parent class, in the context of DBD, likely houses code for pawn possession, allowing keyboard and controller inputs to possess the unit, which houses a modular code for items, add-ons, and offerings. These are universal traits among all player characters within Dead by Daylight, Survivor and Killer alike. That's right, both roles, for all their differences, are from the same base class. The reason I know this is the case is because within the game's code, killer powers are actually treated as items.
That is probably why the game is so freaking buggy, is that because powers are considered items. Oh boy, that might be at the core what the problem is for a lot of these issues that we have within the game, and of course even more so is probably why we can't receive any sort of cosmetics for our powers when we are playing the killer. So that unfortunately does display the sad reality that this game is cooked. This game is absolutely cooked.
Yeah, like your medkits and flashlights. This could clearly be seen back in the early days of the game, where bugs existed that allowed killers to drop their power, and which made it possible to equip another killer's power onto someone else, such as the infamous Chainsaw Myers, by confusing the game as to which item the killer had equipped. As this has actually been confirmed by the developers, it raises serious implications about the flexibility and the stability of the foundational code the whole game is built upon. A long-term example of the inflexibility within the game's code comes with the perk Franklin's Demise, which for all intents and purposes has been a complete pain in the dick for the developers. Back in the day, when a killer hit a survivor, Franklin's would cause them to drop the item they were holding, and unless they picked it up within 90 seconds, it would be destroyed, straight up deleted from the trial. It's such an interesting idea. Why did they remove it? Well, that's because with the introduction of Pinhead, the devs realized that if a survivor was holding the lament configuration, Franklin's Demise introduced the possibility of deleting Pinhead's power. Due to the inflexibility of the code, they couldn't just toggle a failsafe. For example, a property named Immortal could be made true or false within a child, which would prevent a specific item from being destroyed. But since something like this wasn't coded, due to the short-sighted nature of how the game was made, what can they do? The only thing they could do without spending time and money recoding items within the base class to introduce failsafes like this was to outright remove the feature from Franklin's that destroys the item. Franklin's was instead.
So what we're hearing from a game dev, essentially, not from DVD, but just like someone who's been studying game development, we can definitely see that by the very just definition, like by the very just function of how just at the core level, that because the killer powers are considered items, Franklin's would directly destroy its your own power, which is insane, such as Pinhead. That is insane. And it's crazy that Franklin's ends up getting changed because of it, and it's even crazier that even now Franklin's got even more, I wouldn't say gutted, but got completely changed out to the point that now it's a completely different than where the heck it is now. You know what I mean? It's insane. So yeah, I don't know, it's it ain't looking too good for DBD because of this, and yeah, that's insane.
We're changed to drain items charges, which, while not as effective as deleting it, was still a fair and somewhat equal compromise, which still achieved the same effect, making the item useless. It's a shame that a perk had to be nerfed due to the inflexible code the game was built on, right? Well, it's not over yet, because much later down the line, with the introduction of fog vials, once again, Franklin's became an issue with the developers. Due to the fogs introducing a new mechanic, an item without charges, this, of course, conflicted with the nature of Franklin's, and I assume would either cause a game to crash or cause nothing to happen at all. Now, this would be unfair if the fog vials were immune from Franklin's effects, while all other items lost charges. So, what can they do? Well, it seems to them the most fair solution was to just, again, nerf Franklin's, making it so the perk no longer drains charges from dropped items. This shows a clear rigidity in the game's code structure, which even back then was causing issues when it came to what was possible for behavior to do in terms of killer powers and items. Now, I want you to imagine that rigidity and then apply it to the rest of the game. The game is progressively rotting from the inside out. With every update and addition, the game conflicts with itself even further, and specific foundational dependencies like the direct tie between killer and survivor cause more and more limitations. Unlike the whole shipper Theseus analogy, they can't just replace boards progressively until the game technically becomes a whole new ship. So many pieces of it are dependent on one another working as they currently are. It makes it impossible to modularly replace bits and pieces without causing severe butterfly effects.
So this directly, as we're hearing from somebody who has a lot more information about game development than I do, is fully explaining to us why this game is falling apart. From like, and it's incredible how well it's being described. I have to give a lot of credit for that being the first thing that I want to point out. The second thing I want to point out is this diagram also fully describes the killer experience that we're seeing nowadays. Increased repair speed, which means the gens pop faster. Gens popping faster means that killers have less time. Killers have less time, so therefore they need to tunnel to catch up. Then that leads to escapes being lower, so repair speed is increased. It's an infinite loop of dominoes falling. That is this image perfectly encapsulates the experience that is within the game right now as well. That fully describes what the problem with the game currently is. And unfortunately, it's just how it goes, you know. And I know that a lot of the time when you hear survivors like try to, you know, sort of share why they have frustrations with the game, it always boils down to blaming the killer. But as you can even see with this example, like if you're increasing the repair speed, it only leads right back to the thing that you don't want. And it's an Ouroboros in my, like, at least how I see it, because like it just keeps infinitely, like, you know, kind of going and going, and it keeps eating itself, because like you will want to repair the gens faster because it's the objective, but then because you're doing that, the other person who has the objective needs to also speed up, which leads to you not liking what you're getting. But it's like, you know, it's kind of inevitable, you know. And yeah, that's just the best way to describe it. That is incredible.
Is that tangled marionette your relatives bought you when they went on vacation? It's nice and it technically works if you try hard enough, but it's not really worth the time and effort it'd take to untangle it. Due to the killer powers being coded as items, this severely limits what's possible in terms of killer powers, which is why we're seeing the creativity and uniqueness of every edition slowly beginning to stagnate. There's only really so many times you can modify an easy code idea such as spawning projectiles before no matter what you do with it, it just feels too samey. For example, take the Huntress. She's the basic form of a projectile killer. Wind up the hatchet and throw it. The longer you hold it, the more velocity the projectile will have. Then from this, they expand upon the idea of projectiles with the Clown. This time, the projectile upon impact spawns an AoE which when stepped into can grant status effects. Okay, that's a clever modification. Now we go down the line to the Death Slinger. The projectile now shoots out from the direct center of the camera view, and when hitting a survivor will pull them towards you. But this time, there's no wind-up mechanic, just immediately full velocity. Now we move on to Trickster, whose projectile also has no wind-up, but this time he has many of them which build up a meter, and with add-ons, they can bounce off surfaces. From this we get the Artist. Same thing with the wind-up, except you only get 3, and they go through walls, immediately giving a status to survivors. Then you get the Spring Trap, no wind-up, and when the projectile hits a surface, it spawns an AoE, basically a combination of the Huntress and Clown's effects, speaking from a coding POV, even if the status effects are different. You get the point, right? After a while, there's only so much you can do with a concept like a projectile. It injures, okay, now it gives status effects, okay, now it pulls you towards the killer, okay, now it bounces. You know, what more can you do? The same principle.
So this is something that I really think a lot of people that like to claim that the game is being lazy and all this type of stuff, it's like you kind of need to hear this part right here. It's like they're kind of have their hands tied, because it's like, how much more can you innovate with projectiles? Like I don't know. If you ask me, I don't know, right? And especially with the limitations that we're seeing, like how much more can you innovate with this? We're taking into account that it's code, but we're also taking into account what exists. And when I've heard, like, and I've talked about this when Springtrap was being released, like a lot of people were like, oh, this is like terrible. It's like, yeah, But what did you honestly expect it to be? Like, I don't know what you possibly could say could be added when the factor is, one, the creator doesn't want other animatronics really involved because they don't kill people, in his, like, you know, according to his lore, and two, the limitations of the code. Like, how much can you possibly do, you know, with this character? You know, he has a teleport, cool. And then the thing was, is like, my issue was, like, anytime I would try to figure out what type of example, a lot of the time they just wouldn't really give a strong enough thing. They would just say, oh, I don't know, and then they would give up like some kind of like strange example, and that just wouldn't work with the coding. And yeah, like, it's one of those things. And I look at this game a lot like a fighting game in a lot of ways, where like they all like function the same way. Like, killers all function the same way. You're going against an opponent that, you know, wants to counteract what you're trying to do. And I look at it in the sense, like, everybody has the same buttons, like, everybody has like the same kind of move in a way. Everybody has a super, everybody has a meter, or whatever you want to call it. In a sense, right? Everything kind of functions a certain way, but everybody plays those characters differently. They're all still fighters, they're all still like using the same controls, they're all still using the same mechanics in the game, but they functionally are different because of what they're capable of doing. And that's how I view killer, and at least for me, like, when I try to even imagine if I were adding a killer, what comes to mind is what has existed and how we can try to incorporate things that have existed to make a more, like, a kind of change it up and make a unique thing out of it. And obviously I can get into more detail on concepts in other videos talking about different concepts of characters I want to see in the game, but yeah, that's its own thing, of course.
Applies to teleporting killers. It's a simple ability in terms of coding which was first seen with the Hag. It was shown to work and was well received, and so it was expanded upon to where nowadays almost all new gen killers have one. But now it's getting to the point players are sick of anticipating the power of a new and creative killer might be, only to be disappointed when they learn it's going to be another teleporting killer with a projectile. This also infamously applies to the Dash killers, giving rise to the lovingly named Dash Slop. Hillbilly is the original Dash killer, and from him we now have the Cannibal, the Pig, the Demogorgon, the Oni, the Blight, the Mastermind, the Good Guy, the Dark Lord in his wolf form, the Houndmaster's Dog, the Ghoul, and the Krasu's Headlong Flight. That's 11 killers
Myers
with some form of I go forward with lots of speed. Where are the killers which can send survivors to other locations like the Halloween events? Where are the killers who have more complex secondary objectives other than go to my chest and use this item? Where are the killers who can crawl on the walls and ceilings? Oh yeah, about that. Due to the rigidity of the base code of this game, it's actually impossible to create a killer which can walk on anything besides horizontal surfaces, so don't expect anything like that, ever. It's not happening. So what can behavior really do about all this? Well, it really depends on where your priorities are set. If it's about the real health of the game and the potential it has, then the best solution would be to simply just completely start from scratch. That's right, Dead by Daylight 2, or more like a remaster. The reason why this hasn't already happened is because not only would this likely result in players losing all their progress, cosmetics and paid DLC, it would also mean they would actually need to spend the money making a new game, which they're clearly unwilling to do. The second reason why I believe...
I also think that it would be a complete nightmare trying to get those licenses back. Like, they already cut those contracts, they already, like, have, you know, whatever they had to do that, and I don't think that they would want to do it again. I feel like it'd be very difficult, depending on the license, to try to get it on there again. Let alone the accessibility. Obviously, everybody already has this game for a very good price, so having to, like, resell the game would be a whole nother thing. I wouldn't imagine they'd go free to play. I just really don't think that would be the case, because this is still behavior we're talking about, and they, you know, they try to drip as much money as they can get in order to keep the damn game running. And that's not even really a dig at them. It's more just how it works. Like, you need funding to keep it alive. So it's just, you know, it makes sense, obviously. Yeah, like, I mean, this guy's on the mark.
They will never do this is because, again, due to behavior's short-sighted nature, they likely didn't include any clauses anywhere in the contracts they sent out to their oh-so-coveted license holders, which stipulates that in the event of a sequel or remaster, they retain the rights to use the licensed characters. This means that they would need to reach out to every previous license holder to resecure the rights to those characters.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying.
Think Ghostface, Resident Evil, Chucky, and
Now, mind you, the Ghostface image we're using in this video is not accurate to the actual Ghostface in the game. We have a mask license. That's it's a minor nitpick, but still. I'm going to go ahead and end the video here so you guys can, like, you know, at least support the original creator on this and watch the rest of the video. You know, if it was a bit longer, I might have been able to say that there was like more to add in. So my apologies for that. But either way, I appreciate you guys watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube things. Consider becoming a member for exclusive content, perks, things like that. And let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section. I will see you guys in the next one. Well, I wanted to go ahead and take some time out to thank all my members from Patreon with Crow King 101, my YouTube members, Majora Jeff, Endire, Evil Peachy YT, Zero Mocker, Christian, Hexdev, and Crow Vader, and for my Twitch subscribers, Cake is the Road, Danica 2002, Final Girl _ Bunny, Acklefin, Chili Cinderace, Zero Mocker, Ginsburg, Johns 117 _ Lovely Ghost TTV, Jar TTV, Zazaboo, and Crow Vader. Just wanted to thank you guys. And if you also want to have your name read off at the end of every video, make sure you join on one of these platforms to get one of those perks, as well as the other perks you get. So, appreciate you guys. Thank you guys so much.